Own Way, the podcast with me, your host, Kori McClurg.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Get Out of Your Own Way, the podcast. I'm Kori McClurg, your host of Get Out of Your Own Way podcast and the author of Get Out of Your Own Way, the book. Highly, of course, recommend that book. But seriously, so today I want to talk about feeling one-dimensional. So this came up for me because I just joined this group, and kind of as, you know, one of the icebreaker, whatever things, get to know you things, in the app. We have in real life get-togethers, but we have this companion app to like help coordinate, you know, and all that. And so our facilitator, you know, kind of kicked off the group because now it was like a bigger introductory group, and then the people that decided to join, we're starting like our first sessions this week. And so the facilitator kicked it off with, you know, say hello to everybody and maybe like a fun or random fact about yourself in the chat here. And I hate those kinds of things. And it just, cause you know, I think of 25 different things, and then I think, oh, that's just one stupid thing. I don't want like people to think that's all I am. And, you know, or like I am fearful of like what people's reaction to that's going to be for, you know, whatever. And so I've been giving a lot of thought to this whole, like this idea that nobody wants to be put in a box, right? Nobody wants to be one-dimensional. I don't think, certainly there are people that have like one thing that they highly, highly identify with, and that's kind of what they want the essence of their being, you know, and how they're perceived to be. And certainly there are values that I have that are, you know, very much drive my entire life. But also that's not the extent of who I am. There's so many sort of subtle and unsubtle things about me that sort of round out, you know, who I am. And I think it's really easy to do that to ourselves, especially when it comes to something that we're challenged with. So, you know, if we struggle with a substance, you know, whether that be alcohol or food or whatever, I think it's really easy to get in this space where we kind of one-dimensionalize ourselves, and we feel like, well, this is all we are, and that everything about us is kind of driven from, you know, this one thing. And certainly sometimes that really does happen. You know, people have traumatic events in their lives, and a lot of their life ends up being driven by that, you know, one traumatic event. And I don't mean to discount that. However, when we really think about it, you know, there's so much more to us than just the one thing. You know, we often have other interests. We often have other values. We often have, you know, other cares and concerns in our lives that aren't related to that one thing. And so whether it's these, how others are perceiving us, or more importantly, how we're perceiving ourselves, because we have this one thing. And for sure, you know, like my whole book is kind of written about that. It's written about the fact that we do have these other things that we care about, right? That you have this small flame perhaps burning inside you of of a thing or things or people or whatever that you care about. But that we're getting in our own way, because we have, health or weight concerns. And, I think, and for sure, I want people, I'm trying to empower all of you to be able to get that health stuff out of the way so you can really feel like that little flame that's inside you can just take off. And there's something to be said for that, right? Like that sometimes it is all mind consuming and sometimes it is all physical time consuming to be managing disease. But also we are other things. Also, we still have, this stuff inside of us that we care about, that isn't related to, that health issue. And so even while you're trying to, repair your health, I think it's helpful to be mindful that this isn't everything that you are and that you don't need to reduce yourself to I'm overweight. You don't need to reduce yourself to I'm diabetic or I do chronically overeat or have a eating disorder or that is not all that I am. And that perhaps, your path can also be these things in parallel. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing that I'm only fixing my health right now so that one day I can go give my time and attention to this other thing that I care about. You can absolutely be fostering these other things that you care about while you're trying to make improvements in your health. If, your burning desire is to, I don't know, like open an animal shelter or sanctuary or whatever, that's maybe not in the cards right now while you are actively managing diabetes. But maybe you can volunteer for a couple hours a week or whatever at the local shelter. And that tends to help foster this idea that you are more than your health and so many other good things come with that, right? Like that you're developing a better sense of yourself and you're really investing in this thing that you care about. And it just helps fill you out as a person instead of just being so focused on the fact that you have diabetes, on the fact that you're overweight or whatever the issue is. And then, I think that it helps when we, as so often is the case, when we start fostering those things in ourselves, then that just, right, that spreads. And that's that little ripple in the pond that begins with us. So even though, we haven't lost the 100 pounds that we need to lose, but we started, volunteering a little bit of our time, that changes people too. That helps other people, that changes us and that changes the people around us. We've started setting an example in another way for the people around us, our kids, our spouses, our friends. And you're not always going to know it. Like so much of this happens subtly, right? Within us and outside of us. It's these subtle little shifts. And it's frustrating, I know, because it doesn't happen the way that it does in the movies. In the movies, there's some big dramatic scene and then like everything is different after that. And that's not, more often than not, that's not really how it works. I mean, yeah, sometimes people have like these really dramatic like health scares, they are in the hospital, they had a heart attack, they whatever. And then, from that moment on, they were different because they had the crap scared out of them and for sure, there's brain chemicals, right, that happen. There are things that happen in your brains that often create that kind of massive change. And just the trauma of that, right, changes your brain. So for sure, those things can happen. But for most of us, it's little things that happen every day. It's these little shifts, and you don't necessarily notice it until it's been a few days, a few weeks, and you start, and then only if you're aware, if you used to pay attention, will you actually get a sense of satisfaction out of that, celebrate that, hey, I've made some changes, or hey, I'll say one thing that's happened for me in my life is like, I've noticed recently how much less all the people around me drink now. I never would have thought that me not drinking would impact everybody else's, but all of our, so many of our friends don't drink as much as they used to, or have stopped drinking altogether. It's just these little things. When you stop being, one dimensional and you embrace the whole of you, that's good for you and that's good for everybody around you. So anyway, that's what was on my mind today. And I thought that might be helpful for the rest of you to focus on everything that you are, what's important to you and your values, and not just the one thing that is troubling you, the one thing that maybe is contrary to your values. And I think you'll find that it can help make the repair of that one thing that's troubling you a little easier. So have a great week, and I'll see you again soon.